I brought up the FC Dallas example, how they decided to just fully opt out as a team because they had so many positive tests. How do you see this season resuming for the Marlins and the rest of the league?
The Marlins, Molly, have no intention of opting out of this season. What they're trying to do is get two things taken care of right now. Number one, figuring out how they're going to travel, both the players who haven't tested positive for COVID-19, as well as the 15 players and 2 staff members who have tested positive and probably want to go back to Miami rather than spend the next week, 2 weeks, indeterminate amount of time in a hotel in Philadelphia. The second part is putting together a representative major league roster. And that's the tougher part, because even if the Marlins use every player on their 40-man roster who is healthy, that still does not fill out the 30-man roster, active roster, that they are able to keep on a daily basis. So they've been hunting around for minor league free agents. They could call up some players from their alternate site in Jupiter, Florida. Either way, it is going to look like a much different team than the one they ran out there in their last game against the Phillies.
I have a word for Major League Baseball, Jeff, and it's cavalier. The term coronavirus, COVID-19, the pandemic that we're dealing with, it seems like when we say 14 players have gotten it, 18 players have gotten it, it's like, well, no big deal. We just replace them on the roster and we'll keep playing the games as scheduled, like last night. So are we living in a different universe here? There's a reason why Major League Soccer, the WNBA, the NBA, Dana White with Fight Island, there's a reason why these sports are trying to do some sort of bubble. Why does baseball, and or the NFL for that matter, seem to be immune to these facts?
Jalen, there was the opportunity for Major League Baseball to do a bubble back in April. And I wrote the first story about this, and when it dropped, players were not excited. Now, there were some players who were on board with it, but a number of veteran players, the guys who have the loudest voices, were saying, I do not want to isolate away from my family potentially for months at a time. You look at a guy like Mike Trout, whose first kid is due in August. You know, he didn't want to be missing for the last few months of his wife's pregnancy. And so because of that deluge, not just from the players, but as well from Major League Baseball, which felt like it was incentivized to play in home stadiums and to have, whether it's because of the comfort, whether it's because of the advertising revenue, the billboards, or just the fact that they are major league stadiums as opposed to the majority in the Phoenix area or down in Dallas or Florida being minor league stadiums, they chose to go against the bubble. And, you know, I don't think they're operating in this alternate universe. I think they're looking at the facts that are most convenient for them to continue the season. And one of those that they put out yesterday, along with the release talking about the Marlins season being postponed for the moment, was the fact that over the last 4 days, there have been 0 positives throughout the sport outside of the Marlins. Now, it's very easy to say that when you have 17 on one team. I mean, if you have 17 throughout the sport in a week, it's a bad week. But 17 on one team, it's a disastrous situation. And what they're hoping is that it's an isolated one as well.
Well, they're hoping. And one thing that we know is we cannot predict where this virus will go. And this is a very tenuous situation. You look at what happened with the Marlins. To sit here in this chair and look at this camera and say, you know what, that was an isolated incident. They'll probably play out the rest of the season uninterrupted. There won't be another outbreak in this sport. It's just not realistic. Most likely we will see that. And most likely we'll have another team that will have some positives. And they'll have to kind of postpone some games to be made up later. And I'm looking at this and I'm also thinking, if I'm the NFL and I'm Roger Goodell, I'm looking at how the Major League Baseball is handling this, playing games outside the bubble, and I'm not exactly encouraged about starting my season.
No, and college football has to feel the same way. And, you know, the interesting part about this is that Major League Baseball says that it was preparing for situations like this. That's why the rosters have been expanded to 60 players that you can have around for scenarios like this. But an outbreak of this size, an outbreak of this magnitude, it doesn't speak well for the sport and for its plan. And the idea that they're going to go through the rest of the season without something like this happening again, frankly, is naive. I think where baseball was luckiest, and honestly, I wish this were not the case, but if this were the New York Yankees or the Los Angeles Dodgers, guys, We might not be having a conversation about the team shutting down. We might be having a conversation about the league shutting down. Because here's the thing, the Marlins are not going to be good this year. The team that they're facing, or we're supposed to face, the Baltimore Orioles, not going to be good this year. So if you shave those games off their schedule, when it's all said and done, their winning percentage is not going to put them in playoff contention. But if you had a big market team, if you had a big money team, if you had a team that had star after star testing positive, completely different story.
And that's why I use the term cavalier.
Point.
Because
Go ahead, Jalen.
have they not been paying attention to the fact that over 140,000 people have actually died via coronavirus? So basically, you're allowing the employees to show up at work, and David Price basically sent a tweet about this. This is why he opted not to play. You're basically sending your employees to work in a condition where you basically know that they can and or will catch it. But since they're not a storied franchise, we may just shave them off and continue with the games like they happened last night. There's no plan.
Yeah. You know, there's also this, though, Jalen. The players themselves agreed to come back. The players were going to miss their paychecks this year. The players, they understood that if you're going to go out and try to play a season this year, there are risks inherent with that. And you just hope that the protocol that's laid out by MLB and that was agreed upon by the players is stringent enough, and that the people who were involved, the people who were on the front lines there in terms of baseball, follow it. I go back, though, to what Sean Doolittle, the Washington Nationals relief pitcher, said. He said that sports are a reward for a functional society. And when you bring up, Jalen, the number of people who have died and the way that this virus has infiltrated our country and has done to it what it has, you can make the argument that this is not a particularly functional society these days, and that sports altogether should not be back.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.